Welcome to episode 15 of Beneath the Grandstand. I am Ryan Fenton, joined with Alex Lohr. What is going on in St. Paul, my friend?
It's a beautiful time to be in St. Paul. Things are cooling off. The mosquitoes are bugging out a little bit, so it's like it's almost there's a hint of fall marathon training season upon us for races that aren't actually happening. But if they were, it would be time to start training and getting serious about it.
Yeah, well, I know Alex is fit. I can attest to that. We got to do something kind of weird during this time. We actually traveled this past week, and Alex and I were on a trip to Portland, Oregon, and won't disclose too much why, because that will be part of some upcoming episodes, but some things to look forward to there. But yeah, we went on a few runs. The first run we went on was Forest Park. I suggested we drive to Forest Park from our hotel, which was like, 3/4 of a mile away, just because I know it's kind of uphill a lot in that park. But no, we ran from the hotel. So the first 3.5 miles were just a gradual to less, and what I want to say, less gradual or more significant incline. And then I went downhill back to the hotel for another 2.5 miles. So my quads were rocked after day one. And this is sad. I'll just preface this with saying I've been running 3 miles at a time twice a week because my Achilles has been shot. So whenever I go to like Eugene or Portland, I throw all fitness concerns out the window and I just run with people that are way further than me. And then I just continue to injure myself. That's how my life goes.
You just gotta be. I say you gotta be socially fit, right? So you gotta be fit
Yeah.
enough that you can hop into a workout with whoever's in town at that time.
Yeah. And workout is used more loosely nowadays than it used to be. So, oh, you're
Well, you're
jogging to
talking
the
to someone
store?
who you did film me try to run with Ryan Hall once in New York City, which did not go super well for me. Viewers can check out that old school video sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it was good. We had a lot of fun. And then day two, Alex took me for a quote unquote easier route and we went straight up a mountain. It was only a mile of uphill, or a mile and a quarter. So not 3.5 miles, but it was straight uphill. No one else around us was running. And there was a lot of large rocks that we had to run across. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You were pumping your arms like you were running. It's just the feet part that was.
But
We'll
no,
get there.
it was a good trip, and I think what one of the things that actually came from that trip is something new that we are introing on this week's show, and that is a new series. I'll let Alex talk about. But we actually put this out there on social media. Alex, you want to talk about what you did to get, how we came up with the name and the input we got from the folks out there?
There were some really strong responses. So essentially, I said, "Hey, me and Ryan are considering profiling each new racing flat that has come out from each brand. We want to talk to the people who have been building it and the people that are running in it." So we put out the idea, and we put out we needed some crowdsourcing for the actual title. So some of the names that were thrown out were Carbon Clash, Tongue and Move. Let's see. Let's see if I can find some of the others. There. Between Two Foams. That was one of my favorites from
I did like
BRD.
that one.
An old throwback. Yeah. 40 millimeters to victory. Strange Flex, Foam and Fiber, Chonk Boys, which is a Sidious throw. I'll give some love to those guys. But what was clearly the winner? What was clearly the winner came from our good friend Tom Farrell, and he came in with the Flats and the Furious, and so that's the winner. And so all creative love needs to go to Mr. Tom Farrell, who's a good friend of ours. So I'm going to dive into the series within our series here. So the first installment of the Flats and the Furious, we dive into the footwear innovations that are pushing the boundaries of what we thought possible. We'll meet the industry professionals who poured their lives into building this product, and then we're going to get an athlete's perspective for how it actually feels on foot.
And, the whole reason that we're doing this is, probably pretty obvious. There's been a huge talk around shoes in running. And, you look back to when Eliud Kipchoge went after his first sub-2 attempt, and the sub-2 attempt itself was amazing. But then there was a whole talk about the shoe and this new shoe he was wearing, and then his second attempt. And, Nike really started pushing the envelope in what this next piece of technology was going to be, right? And we saw all these companies trying to come out with their version of this shoe that had really just created such big waves, and a lot of thanks to Kipchoge and the amazing performances he was running in this shoe. I mean, props to Nike. It was probably one of the greatest recent marketing campaigns I've seen. It was pretty brilliant in that sense. That said, you look at the trials in the Olympic trials in February in Atlanta, and all the athletes, that were unsponsored wearing this shoe, and athletes that did have sponsors, those sponsors trying to get shoes out. And then the IAAF, or now World Athletics, putting regulations in place on when shoes needed to be out before the Olympics. And it really had the whole industry scrambling to figure out how to do it quickly. And within all that, the talk, really controversy or chatter around, what these shoes are, and are they okay? And does one shoe have an advantage over another? And does a brand have an advantage over another? And ultimately what this all means is that we're in a significant moment in the evolution and development of running shoe technology. And that's what we want to dig into. Is there's all this chatter out there, but we want to really hear about this technology and how it's pushing athletes forward, how it's pushing performances forward, and how it's setting the stage for new records, marks, and what we know to be possible in the world of running, especially road running and marathon running.
Yeah, and I think it was a little bit of the wild, wild west for a while there. And now that the World Athletics has come in and actually put the standards in place, the plane has kind of leveled a little bit. And now I think what the running world needs is like an open source kind of dictionary or reference to get some insight into how these shoes feel, because we know that these are big investments, right? And so we want to give you guys all the insights that are behind these shoes. So if you do ever pull trigger on one of these, you're going to feel good about doing it. So that's kind of the goal of rolling out this new series. And we also want to tell the stories of the people in our community and in the industry who have kind of been pouring all their creative insights into this, because we know our community loves a good origin story. So today we are going to profile the Adidas Adios Pro, which rolled out June 30th. The Adios Pro is 8.6 ounces. It's 39.5 stack height, and comes in at $200. And just for a reference, the Alpha Fly is 7.4 ounces, so just a dash lighter. And its retail price is actually $275. So that's an interesting insight. The Adios is maybe a skosh heavier, but it's also right at that $200 price point, so significantly more affordable. So we're going to dive into this and the technology behind the Adios Pro and the journey it took to get there. First, I
was just going to say, Alex, you emphasized 39.5 millimeters. Why was that?
Exactly. That's on a size 9, because we know that you cannot go beyond 40 millimeters on your size 9 as per IAAF guidelines. So they stuck right under that. They did a nice job, skirting that. They did it with a 0.5 millimeter wiggle room. So anyway, so we're gonna talk to one of the guys involved, and we're gonna talk to one of the guys involved in that project. He's the product line manager on the Adizero side of things over at Adidas. Adizero is the elite racing type line on their running footwear, and then so he's going to give us an insight into the journey it took to get to this final launch date here on June 30th. And then we're going to get some insight from an athlete, Reed Fischer. And why did we choose Reed? Well, Reed actually had the opportunity to try a lot of the other carbon-plated racing flats before he tried the Adidas one. And so he has some really interesting insights on what makes this one different. So again, thanks for joining us, guys. And we're going to kick it off here for episode 1. the Adidas Adios Pro, and this is product line manager Nick Roche.
So sitting here alongside my good friend Nick Roche. Nick is the product line manager on the Adizero line at Adidas. Nick and I worked together at Adidas in 2016 and 2017. But Nick, for the viewers at home, listeners at home now, what would you say when people hear product line manager or PLM, what would you say that means?
I would say it sounds really important, and it's really not that important. Well, it is pretty important. Basically, what the easiest way to describe. Yeah, I'm a big deal.
What'd you say you do here?
Never heard of me. I would say the easiest way to describe what I do is I manage and other product line managers at other companies, or product managers, however you look at it, manage the end-to-end process from a product brief, an initial brief that someone in my position would create and hand over to their design and development team, all the way through to retail intro. And there's numerous stops along the way, sample rounds, handing over to comms, handing over to go-to-market teams that take it. But basically from day one of brainstorming what you want to make, all the way through to it being on the shelf at your local run specialty, or I suppose like online with COVID. So.
Yeah.
Can I ask explain a product brief? So that sounds like that's the first step. What does that look like? And you say those are something you create. What is actually created in that brief?
Yeah. So again, I can only speak to Adi and how we do it. But basically, I create a one-pager that includes insights on either consumer insights, speaking with athletes or everyday consumers, market insights, be that, as Adi breaks it down, it's like North America, Asia, Pacific, and then Western Europe, or like emerging markets. Those are like our big markets. So market trends that are happening around the world globally. And then the third one is I look at customer insight, which is like your Fleet Feet, your Dick's Sporting Goods, your Pro Direct Running in the UK, your Sport Check in Germany, like stuff like that. And I kind of compile those all in on how we can improve, for example, like the new Adizero Boston. It's due for an update. Let's gather all these things in and let's see where we can kind of improve the shoe, and then hand it over to the team to hopefully create that.
So the insights and the briefs that you're pulling out, right? Mm-hmm. I guess, so we're specifically targeting and chatting about new racing flats right now, right? And so I guess, when you think back to the OG brief for the Adios Pro that just dropped, what was the insight there, right? Was it a consumer insight that said there's a space for this product in this market, or was it just straight up innovation and brand driving?
I would say it was a lot of everything that I kind of just touched on. So the main thing was, there's other shoes in the industry that have been out for a couple years now, coming from various brands, and we wanted to make sure what we released was up to the Adidas standards, which, you were at the company, are very high as far as everything going to market needs to be very legit. So sometimes it does mean that we are slower getting things out, but when it does come, it's going to be great. So with the Adios Pro, the insight that went into that was a very obvious competitor analysis, how looking at shoe counts at world major marathons, as granular as Olympic marathon finish medalist shoes, what they're wearing, and then down to talking to our own athletes and our own consumers, and just the pressure to kind of deliver something that they were confident in, and within testing all the rounds of that with the shoe, it's gone great. Our athletes love it. Our sports marketing team has delivered us a bunch of great insights from the team, from the athletes, and that kind of, like I said, competitor, industry, and then athlete, consumer insight. I would say, like I mentioned before, like a market insight doesn't really matter, because if you make a really sick racing flat, like it's going to sell in Japan, it's going to sell in China, it's going to sell in New York City, it's going to sell in London, Berlin, like it's going to sell all over. People want to be fast. So as far as markets, doesn't really matter.
So when the product brief, initiated for the Adios Pro, a couple questions. When did that happen? When did it get initiated? Whose idea is it to say, hey, we have to start this process? Is that you? Is it the company, other folks in the company that kind of ignite that on your end? And then how long does that process take to actually get the brief for something like this together? Like with you, you're saying there's all these specifications and high expectations. So three questions. Sorry, I threw them at you.
No, it's okay. I'll try to answer them as it comes. So I would say the ultimate press go came from our GM, Alberto Uncini Maganelli. Aced that name. Hell yeah, first try. He's the general manager of Adidas Running and Core and Kids. And he was like, guys, to be completely honest, he's like, guys, I'm tired of, we lost the world record on the men's side, and what are we doing about it? And now he's finally like, we need to make something. Let's see what we can make. And he really empowered the team that I'm a part of, and did kind of, to be completely honest, got a bunch of resources as far as jobs and whatnot to bring in the most experienced individuals within the company, and we made this, not to be overshadowed. We launched a Adizero Pro, very confusing names. I apologize to everyone listening, and all the consumers. It is very confusing. We're working on that.
So you're saying Adizero Pro is different than the Adizero Adios Pro?
Yeah. So the Adizero Pro is what Mary Katani wore when she got second at New York, and then Eliud Kipchoge got third Doha in the marathon in it, and then Albert Career got second in New York, I believe, in the Adizero Pro, and that was more a traditional, Adidas approach to kind of getting into this, or getting back into, kind of like to remind consumers, we released the Adizero Pro Plate back in like 2009, Haile Gebrselassie wore it. So we were kind of like the originators into the plated shoe game, just to give everyone a history lesson real quick. But anyways, I digress. Getting back into it, and that was really our first. We had worked on that. The team had worked on that for about 18 months, and it kind of debuted in New York last year. And then with just the World Athletics, or formerly known as, or currently known as IAAF regulations coming in and everything, we had an opportunity in a confined space to build something, and like I said, with the GM's blessing and a lot of resources, we kind of pushed go, and we kind of, I think the first samples we got in were August of last year, and we launched it. We were actually, I can say it now because it doesn't matter, we were going to launch pairs of the white and signal coral at Boston and at London in person, and then obviously those did not occur.
Yeah.
So we were ready to launch it, 7 months later after the brief, and that was a couple factory trips. That was 4 trips to Germany for me from Portland, Oregon. So
the brief was, so from when your GM said go, that was when?
Like June, July, and then like formal handover
of 2019.
Yeah.
So this was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
I mean, and I say that because it seems like in the shoe industry, you're working always at least a year out.
Yeah. So it's traditionally you'd work on inline, like all the companies, the people that work on the stuff that I work on. You're looking at like 18 months. Yeah. Traditionally, from like brief to retail intro. But I mean, again, we have to like remind ourselves that we didn't have shoe count. We were losing records at various distances. Tokyo was supposed to happen like now. So like we were going all in on this is our shot for Tokyo 2020. Mm-hmm. And then it didn't happen, and here we are in Portland, Oregon, in my temp housing apartment, recording an episode.
But I bring up the timeline because it's you could easily say, hey, this was that we were told this is an important initiative.
Yeah.
Knowing the industry works 18 months in advance of a launch.
Yeah.
You guys are doing it in half the time. I think it speaks to how serious that initiative was.
Yep. Yeah. No, and usually, the GM and the various like senior vice presidents or vice presidents are involved to some degree on like just checkpoints a couple times along the season. But this was like when this came down, it was like, all right, let's strap in, crew. It's gonna be one hell of a couple months here, and then the Olympics got delayed, and we had a shoe that we were confident in, and we said, let's take advantage, let's launch it, let's take the time for consumers to kind of get, and our athletes more importantly, not that they're more important than consumers, but there's athletes need to get used to running in a shoe, and now we've got a year until Tokyo, or a little under, like a year, and now they've got a whole year to, get acclimated to this new shoe, which is dramatically different than anything the company's ever made as far as running goes. So
I have to think, you talked about the press go moment.
Yeah.
GM comes in and says, I'm sick of losing shoe count. I'm sick of losing records.
Yeah.
What was it like? Was it enabling or like cathartic? Because like in that moment, there's no way that you and your team and like the hardcore runners and the innovators weren't thinking about the next ideation, right? And like dropping a carbon fiber, edition of an Adios racing flat, right?
Yeah.
So when he finally said go, was it kind of this moment where like, well, hell yeah, we've been thinking about this for years. Like, we're ready to pull trigger on this shit right now. We're ready. Like, what was that moment to finally get the green light to embrace and be like, let's fucking go, the brand's behind this?
I mean, it was incredible. It's something that a lot of people, the previous PM, Rich Martins, have wanted to hear for a while. And yeah, I don't know. It's very rare. It was due to unfortunate circumstances of us kind of, call it like it is, like not kind of getting our butts kicked and getting, this is the reality, and we've got a very hyper competitive GM and senior leadership on the team, and that's great. And they're finally like, we're tired. Let's get it. Like, let's put up or shut up. And I mean, being an American, being the only American on the project team, with a team based in Germany, like I was like, hell yeah, let's do this shit. And they were like, all right, sounds good.
I thought it was, you started, we were talking about timelines, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned like, Tokyo's supposed to be happening right now. And Boston didn't happen, and he was gonna launch at Boston, and so we dance around these timelines. But for you, as somebody who owns and loves the shoe and wants the best for it, like now we have even more of a window.
Yeah.
Was there a for now that things have been like the can's been kicked down another year, like is there an element of like, shit, I wish I would have had another year to ideate and tinker a little bit more before we actually launch this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always, you have to be super confident in what the team and in your own work and what you're making. But it's also, I remind people, and it's just shoes, and you're always gonna, we're constantly innovating. And when I think we can't innovate anymore, I tell myself to shut up and keep innovating. And it's just kind of what it is. So yeah, I would have loved more time had I known, But it's also, we have to, I have to remind myself and the listeners here is that this is still, like, we hadn't come out with something like this. Again, the Adizero Pro is a great shoe. It's got 2 silvers at the New York City Marathon and a bronze at Doha, and people are like, that shoe sucks. And you're like, what are you talking about? It's a great shoe, but like, because it has boost and it has like a top-loaded Carbotex plate, people are like, yeah, but that's not what the rest of the industry is doing. And you're like, yeah, but it's clearly still a really good shoe. Mm-hmm. So it's just because it's not the same. But again, so with the Adios Pro, we would have loved time, but still, we needed to put something out to kind of reassure the industry, reassure ourselves, reassure our athletes and consumers that like we're taking this shit seriously. Because I will say people did begin to question us, like, where's Adidas? We had the world record for 10 plus years on the men's side. You know, we had Mary and now Joycelyn like knocking on the door of Paula's to some degree, like, so it was there. But yeah, I don't know.
So you know, when you just said, you know, hey, we always continue to innovate, right? Like, you always wish you could do more, but you're always going to continue that process.
Yeah.
This is a little different time. It feels like, where it's kind of a historic moment in footwear.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, you look at what Nike do with Kipchoge and the buzz it caused, and so there is that. I have to imagine that and part of that reason that timeline was cut so quickly, right? So how is that different from the normal? Hey, we're going to iterate on a shoe we already have, or create a new shoe with new technology for us, maybe, or a variation of it, to something's already out there in the marketplace. And Adidas, not only Adidas, really everyone is behind now. It's you know, there's a kind of a stake in the ground.
Yeah, I think the most pressure that I felt and the team felt was just getting this first Adios Pro out and consumers and athletes to trust it. And again, it's not to cut short consumers, but guys, we're all runners. We buy shoes that athletes run fast in. We remember back when other shoes came out, it was like, oh, that's pretty weird. Like, I'm just going to keep with my, you know, my traditional thinner, super light marathon racing shoe. But then people start running fast. And now those shoes from various brands are selling out all over the place. So it's more so like, if our athletes believe in it and they believe they can run fast in it, like they've said now, and we get that out, let's see what we can do. And then it is challenging and there is pressure to improve and evolve the concept. But it was just that first one was a lot. Now it's like you can kind of breathe, and then it's like, all right, let's go back. Let's like, it was like 1 week, 2 weeks. Like, when this launched, it was like great. We had a group chat. I was like, man, like, team, we crushed it. That's awesome. And like, all right, team. Well, we got like, what are we doing next?
Cool. So the next deadline is coming up next month, and like, so now we release this. We also need to brief in 2024. Okay, let's go.
I think that was, Ryan, kind of your thing on timelines and shoes. This shoe was very different in a way that when anyone that works in the industry makes shoes, in particular running, and you're working on an 18-month calendar, by the time the shoe comes out, you're like, oh, we're working on like the second or third version. Like, that's old. Like, I've been seeing that forever.
Yeah, like, you seeing the shoe that's on shelves now, does it look old to you?
No, it like still like, because like we have half the time to make it, so now it's like,
because that's completely different. Because I remember when I was at Adi, like, people would be like, oh, I just got this version of the Boston or the Adios. And I'll be like, I don't even know what colorway you're talking about right now. Because like, you stare 2 years into the future the whole time. And then like, I would go to an event and I'd see the shoes that I just shipped an athlete, and I'm like, oh, those look old. Yeah. And like, your perception of colors and your perception of like overlays is like so skewed, and it's like, it's just a really weird balance to try to be on top of. But this shoe, it sounds like completely like broke all the like prototypical like standards of like
internal
timelines
and external like standards within the company and external. And I think that's the hard thing, is like, we are all, I'm sure it will come up from one of you guys at some point. Yeah, I already have, you know, runnable samples of the next version of this, and they're really good. And this shoe's, like the Adios Pro 1, is also really good. So it's kind of like you're looking in the future, and athletes are always like, what's next? It's like, just wait a second. Like, the shoe we gave you is very good. Just like run really fast on that, and then like, we'll get you the new one when it comes out.
Well, that's got to be hard, because so you already see into the future, like this next iteration that you're stoked to pour out there, and you know it's going to be superior. And you were also just talking about, you know, you had the Adios or the Adizero Pro, and then before that it was the Sub 2. How hard is it to work to like finish and like put a shoe on the shelf while you already have something in the back of your mind that is superior. Like
Yeah.
it's got to be so hard to like really pour your heart into sending something to market that you know is inferior.
Yeah, no, I would say a couple examples are like Wilson Kipsang. You know, I know the most recent news is less than ideal, but like before that came out, dude ran like 2:04.10 in Tokyo in the sub 2 with light boost and like a traditional like height in like a mega light shoe. Wilson would have run like 2:01 or like 2:02 mid in an Adios Pro in Tokyo that same day, and that's where you're like, oh, like
And you're just dying to give it to
yeah,
him.
and that's the whole thing. You're like, and it's like the same thing. Like Mary Katani and Joycelyn got there, like when Spencer shipped out their Adios Pros. Sorry, Spencer works in sports marketing, guys at Adi, and they were like, oh, like we wish we would have had those in New York. Like we would have run insane. Well, Mary was like, I would have won, and then Joycelyn's like, yeah, but I would have won by more. So it's kind of like a weird, weird thing going on there. But still, it's like, and it's just hard because you have to balance like working with your team and having confidence on the next product, but at the same time, again, it gets back to like the role of what I do. You're still balancing meeting with athletes, and when sports marketing brings you in, you have to be like, yeah, what we're giving you is the best thing we've made that's in the market. Mm-hmm. We have other things, but we can't give it to you yet. Mm-hmm. And then with the World Athletics regulations and whatnot, like now the most recent one is like it has to be in the market for 4 months before athletes can wear it. So now you're gonna have like 3 of us showing up to races wearing shit, and athletes are gonna be like, yo, like, damn, I can't wear that.
Yeah. And everyone else can, they just can't compete in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like they can wear it in practice.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you said something earlier about on your team you were the only American.
Yeah.
Everyone's based out of Herzog,
yeah.
right? Out in Germany. And so you're targeting this huge month of April with Boston and London, mm-hmm. which for most people that know marathoning is one probably arguably the largest marathoning month of the year, right? But you being US based also know one of the biggest marathons every 4 years is happening in the US with the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
So what was it like to be pushing hard to get this out for April, knowing also the trials are in February?
Yeah.
And then just thinking back as like kind of an outsider to this,
yeah.
You know, all the buzz around, you know, Nike having this room in Atlanta where people could just walk in and get shoes and wear them on the court, you know.
Yeah.
What was it like for you and for Adidas to not have the shoe yet at that, you know, at that event?
Yeah, I think it was a bummer, but we set very realistic timelines. Like we tried.
And was that ever part? That was part of the timeline.
Like we tried. Sure, yeah, we tried. But like, I mean, you look at on the men's side, or you know, we had just recently, like the day before the trials, signed Reed Fischer. 2 weeks before, it was a while before, but like 2 weeks before, Connor McMillan announces, you know, runs 2:12 at New York. And then we had Gerald Mock, who ran 2:10 at Chicago. And we announced him, you know, a month or two prior to that. We announced him, I was in Germany, and like in third week of January, and we announced him. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we're working to try to get shoes, but then at the same time, like, we need to have athletes to put shoes on. And mm-hmm. we you know, working with sports marketing and the rest of the team, we're just like, let's see what we can do. But prior to these signings, we didn't, you know, have the stable that was potentially going to be making a team, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that, but anyways.
Well, it's hard to justify like pushing a project forward if you can't guarantee that their shoes are going to be on anyone's feet.
Exactly.
Right.
That's basically what it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
like when we were doing Dream Mile, mm-hmm. and you know, you were a part of that. We called in every year a lot of IOUs to get those things made, and you know, the Prime SPs and the Avantis, and those were sick. Mm-hmm. Everyone loved them. Some mm-hmm. of the best spikes the brand's made. Mm-hmm. But like, you only get so many IOUs to call in, and that's where we were kind of like, oh, but if we're already kind of calling it in to bring it for Boston and London, like
yeah, exactly.
We're gonna pull it like
that's
6 weeks forward
totally.
again. And
So
you're like,
so essentially,
It's a
when you started the project,
yeah,
the trials were obviously on the calendar, but the domestic athletes in the
Yeah.
U.S.
yeah.
there wasn't the roster yet
Yeah, we had
to push for that date.
The brand hadn't signed it, signed those athletes, and that is what it is. So we kind of everyone agreed to that, and we pushed forward with Boston and London. And then I mean, for everyone, like the 3 men that I named, you know, Gerald, Reed, and Connor wore the Adizero Pro, and I mean Connor got what 20th or 18th or something.
Solid day.
And had a great day. Reed ate shit twice.
That's
like
right.
fell over and like bashed his head.
Which had nothing to do with the shoe.
And yeah, he was like, the shoe felt great. So it's kind of like, but it's also, you know, I don't even think, even if we had this shoe, like you're putting in you're giving an athlete a new shoe that they just signed to a brand. Like it's just, it puts everyone kind of in a weird position. They had the Adizero Pros, they had gotten used to them, and I know they would have loved these, but it's still putting, you know, going back into like when I was competing, there's still a level of like, ooh, I don't know if I'd wear a new shoe on race day, or like at least I'd want to do a shakeout in them, and like, and that's where it gets back into, you know, other companies having big shoe rooms. Like kudos to them, that was sick, but like there are people that got the shoes that didn't wear them for that very reason. So it's kind of like, and they sold them. So
I want to get into. So for our viewers, I'm holding the Adios Pro.
You can
right?
see it. I'm watching this happen. He's fondling the Adios Pro.
Alex looked at me weird about 10 minutes ago because I actually got up and put it on while you guys were talking. He was like, "What are you doing?"
Very serious question.
Yeah, I was like,
"Oh, Ryan's a 9, and I know this is a 9er." So.
Hey, sample size. I heard you
There you
got
go.
some of the new stuff.
So, okay, from a running nerd perspective, right? The us hardcore runners who, you know, let's say the sub 3 fields, people who run sub 3 in the marathon. The
BQs, we'll call them.
Okay, we'll call them. That's the demo, right?
Yep.
The BQs. The competitive advantage that Adidas has with their carbon plated road racing shoe. Adidas's carbon plated road racing shoe is better than a competitor's because why?
I would say error number 1, Alex Lore. We have as you can see on the @Adidas Running Instagram, we have a blown out view. We have a little mini carbon plate in the heel to stabilize the heel and reduce fatigue, but we have energy rods basically from 2/3 of the way through that are carbon infused. They are not plates because as the team and I and other people within the industry get to deal with are these glorious World Athletics regulations around how many stiffening elements you can have in a shoe and the various planes they can go in. Obviously digress. I just had to take that chance to.
I did do my homework, but I was serving it up to you. I know about the energy rods, but I wanted the PLM to really knock it out of the park.
I just dunked on them in my kitchen. Anyways, yeah, I would say the benefit, the competitive advantage that we have here are our energy rods. We have 5 what we're calling energy rods, and they are these rods that mimic and do fall within the same plane as your metatarsals within the human foot. So they strengthen your metatarsals while allowing your toes to kind of move. Like when you move your foot, you can do that. You can shift. So that's basically what this is allowing. Is just naturally stiffening your foot bones, the metatarsals. And that's huge. And while doing that, we're also reducing weight without having one total plate within the shoe. In addition, there are patents that exist by every company usually, and we also have one on energy rods now. But they prevent other companies from normally pursuing that competitive advantage that company has, or that industry advantage. So we worked around a handful of patents and created something that we are extremely confident in, and tested it, and it's tested very well against a competitive set of footwear offering from various companies. And I would also say this, guys, the listeners here, Ryan did the same thing that Alex did last night when he saw the shoe for the first time, which is the same thing everyone else does when they see it. Is like, oh, like, is this, like, is the shoe finished? Like, is this the outsole? Like, is this what it is?
So Nick's rubbing, the outsole, the bottom of the shoe has this very smooth,
Yep.
kind of black rubber to it, and it's different than the rubbers.
You look for grooves.
Yeah, it's totally different
Yeah.
than you usually expect from a typical running shoe, especially an Adi racing flat, where we're used to seeing that. We used to call it the full Conti, which is the continental rubber, which rivets and texture and da-da-da-da. But this is a smooth, and it's jarring almost to the typical road racing fan.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is...
and it looks cool. But you're
Still,
you're
like, are you sure?
Seeing the texture, so
Yeah.
you're like, this looks actually pretty cool, but it's not done yet, right?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. So,
But it is done.
It's done. It's a textile rubber. My developer, shout out Robbie Patterson. He's the Scot on the team. I've got a German designer. Robbie's the Scot.
Another part of the Scottish mafia.
He is, yes. And he worked and created this with the team at the factory, and it's super lightweight, super minimal, and provides great traction across various conditions, tested by our athletes that run significantly faster than I do. So just trust that, individuals that are listening. In addition, I mean, you look at it and you have to think of, like, what other things go really fast that have a similar traction pattern to this. You think road racing bikes, you think F1, cars, and it's just, it makes sense, and that's kind of the we wanted to show that similarity to the consumers, is that, like, this shoe is meant to go fast, and you're gonna run really fast, and you're gonna love it, and you're gonna have great traction. So.
And I think the traction piece is a good point, because, again, kind of part of the initial reaction to that, when you're used to seeing kind of that texture of of the bottom of a shoe, is you just assume that helps you have more traction, right? So when I see this, I was like, oh, well, my first thought is that, like, would this be slippery if it's wet outside?
Sure.
And
so it's basically more surface area, and then with friction, you'll get more grip. Like, you're just creating more grip. And
So if you're slipping, just run faster.
Yeah, just lean into it. You're running on ice. Just lean into it. You've run on ice many times, so it's just what it is.
So I was gonna ask the question.
The question.
I got one
that hadn't been asked yet, and
I'm a Gemini.
And it escaped me as I was rubbing the rubber of the shoe. So
what's your strength finder?
Sure. I'll let Alex. I'll remember it.
I think what I'd love to chat with you about is, and you've teased it a little bit, was the World Athletics timeline, right? And so I want to get you actually the actual wording. So we're talking about new products flooding into the market, and this kind of like arms race to get the product out. So the World Athletics finally comes down with this regulation. Sure. Yeah. So the actual regulation says, from April 30th, April 2020, any shoe must have been available for purchase by any athlete on the open retail market, online or in-store, for a period of 4 months before it can be used in competition. So with the regulation that says it has to be available for 4 months prior to its debut,
prior to it can be approved in an athletic competition.
So what is, when it says available for purchase by any athlete on an open retail market, how do you interpret that
I
sentence?
would love to hear you interpret it, because this is what I deal with every day.
A casual consumer says, like, so I should be able to go to adidas.com for a week and be able to buy it. But And it should be available to more than just one specific location, meaning more than just North America.
Yeah, so how we define it, and that's these great, super vague rules that we get to live with, is it's kind of, we have the team that's communicating with World Athletics and trying to figure out more and more and more. So what we basically narrowed it down to is when we released this shoe,
Define release.
when we launched it, the Adios Pro one, the white with the signal coral, we launched it on adidas.com in the US and then in Western Europe.
There were 2 shoes available.
Yeah, 2 of the exact same.
One in Europe and one in No, but I think that's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah.
Was there any sort of guidelines on like, hey, X amount of inventory has to be available? No. Okay.
There's no.
So a brand could literally
Yep.
put out one pair of shoe.
Yep.
Everyone has the opportunity to buy that one shoe.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that
Vague. You're right.
yes. So there's no volume qualifications. There are no minimum market geo qualifications.
There's no like, hey, you have to be, and they have to be available from size 9 to 913.
There's no, it has to be available at your mom and pop running specialty store in Duluth, Minnesota. But it also has to be on your brand store. There's all we are working on, and the other brands with is it needs to be for sale somewhere in the world 4 months prior to an athlete wearing it.
Okay. It's pretty
In
vague.
a sanctioned competition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That is a. I'm starting to allude to. We talked about. I said the phrase arms race.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And it's like when we saw Eliud go for that sub 2, right? And there was all this hullabaloo and hoopla around.
Great word.
The carbon plate.
Yeah.
So there's technologies. Every brand's working on their own innovation, their own technology, their own approach, right? But once I'm wondering, as somebody who actually works on those products and actually puts them into market, once the World Athletics came down and said like, these are the rules.
Yeah.
Was it like a moment of actual like clarity? Because like now we have our parameters and now we can run. Where before it was like straight up wild west.
Yeah. The answer is yes. Yeah, it was way better. Like you give a product team a box to work with like you can have one pencil in it and that box can only be 40 millimeters high at a US size 9. You're like, all right, well, let's throw a bunch of other crazy shit inside that box. And World Athletics will be like, then you submit it for approval. And if they submit it, then you can be like, yep, here it is. Here's our shoebox. And that's just what it is.
Here's our one pair.
And yeah, we sold many more than one pair. But they sold out very fast, and it was via raffle, and a lot of people are very upset. We've got a lot of very angry Twitter DMs about it.
So they're going to be upset that my size is sitting here in front of me. And when Nick goes to the bathroom at some point, they might disappear.
Well, those people have never gone on to a footwear app, let's call it, and tried to be part of a drop because
sneakers, Yeezy, anything.
Yeah, it's literally like that's the game now.
More people lose than win. I'm convinced nobody wins those.
Way more L's
drops,
than dubs.
I'm convinced nobody gets those.
I have a question about. We talk about innovation but there's also purists, right? And there's people, like you said, like we'll buy the shoe that athletes run fast in. But there's also this creature of comfort kind of style of track and field of fans. And some people will be like, oh my God, they're going to ruin the Adios.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God, what happened to Boost?
Yeah.
So like, how do you... Somebody who's like looking at this and says, what the hell, there's no Boost on here. How do you justify that? Because that was the flagship for so long.
Yeah, I said it a little earlier. We lost the world record, so now we had to make new shit, and our new shit is better. That was true.
But Nick, I love Boost.
Alex loves Boost, but yeah, so we launched it. So we've got Lightstrike Pro full midsole here on the Adios Pro, and we will be disclosing at a later date that's really not that late from now, kind of really what's going into this when we have some more pairs come out into the market. But this is by far our best performing foam across all of the metrics, rear foot, forefoot, energy return, compression set, resiliency. It is the best thing that we have to offer. So, yeah. The purist? Oh, to your purist question as well. I thought you were kind of gonna get about like less on the Boost, and I thought you were gonna be like, oh, all these things have like plates in them and stuff. And I was gonna be like, yeah, but then all those people that like love brands that are like purists, that like
They're also the same people who are like, where's the new shoe?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's the same people.
The shoe thing is if you look back about 10 years ago, give or take a year, there was this controversy within swimming, right, with the suits, right, and these suits where the world records were getting destroyed, right, and you could argue there's shoes out there now that are destroying world records in running that no one thought would be broken, right? And so in swimming, what they did is they banned them. Whereas in running, they said, going back to what you just said, Alex, they said, here's the parameters of what you can do to create this superior product that has really been deemed a superior product, right? There is a performance enhancement to some extent, right? And so so I think that maybe that's where you were thinking he was going with the purist question, is that, hey, why are you changing the shoe? But, and I think you and I might have talked about this, Alex, months ago, or, you go back to, well, people used to run barefoot.
Right.
And then they made a shoe.
Yeah.
So,
like, how long are you going to take that line of thought?
So I don't know. Have you guys seen that, any feedback along those lines of, this is too much?
Yeah, I would say, this is probably something that, this is the evidence for not negating records set in certain shoes, is that when Boost came out, Boost was fucking sick, and a lot of world records fell. And
that's actually a technical term in the Adidas glossary, by the way.
And and a lot of people
Boost meaning fucking sick.
And so like people. And it sucks because like I work for Adi, and like that's the evidence that like my buddies that work at like other brands say is like, yeah, but like you did Boost. It's like Boost definitely gives people a performance benefit. And like, who am I to be like, yeah, we can have Boost, but like if you make something better than Boost, like you can't do that.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
So now it's like, well, we got our time, we got our, I think 2013, the Energy Boost comes out, and then Kometo runs in like 2014 on that mythical day in Berlin. Didn't even crack a sweat, apparently, Dennis Kometo. And then then other brands came out with shoes, a handful of years later, and then here we are. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy regulations are there. I really am. It gives the team and I a space to innovate and to truly innovate, and then you can also, you're testing along the same, heights and the same geometry to some degree, so you can actually compare kind of, it's like apples to like, it's like a Fuji apple to like a Granny Smith apple. Like it's still apples, but they're a little different, but like it's still kind of apples is what I'm getting at. Whereas before it was like, this is a banana and this is a pear.
Right.
And like, let's see what we can do here. So it's just that I'm happy the regulations are there. As a purist in me, I'm happy as well, because you get shoes that allow consumers to run their best, and that's why I get up every day. So
I'm going to take the line of thought a little bit farther, though. So we did get these parameters.
Yes.
You got your pencil box or your shoe box.
Yeah.
But on the same hand, the reason we got to like 4% world and Alphafly world and carbon plate world and stack heights and that conversation is because there was a group of individuals at a brand that started to go, well, what if we did this?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be crazy if we made a shoe that did this?
Yeah.
Who cares? Because people literally went ahead and just said, well, who cares about the rules? Let's just make something that's going to run people super, super fast. So it's great that we have regulations, right? But on the same hand, what's stopping a brand from being like, yeah, those regulations, like, that's fine. We're going to make the next shit. And we don't care about regulations. And we're going to make this shoe that blows your damn mind. Yeah. And it's clearly going to make people run fast. But, you know, they don't have to run it in a real competition. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, it's like we have these rules, but we've already seen them broken, right? In, like, in the sense of, you know, a specific actual race, and like Kipchoge's race was, you know, your pacers and things like that. So innovation and technology. So although we have these standards and guidelines for world athletics, innovation and technology isn't stopping for that. You know what I mean? So like, I guess are you worried that there's a whole nother subset of people who are like making the next technology and totally disregarding these rules?
No. I'm not worried because that's there, and that's what people need to remember when they go on these like Twitter and Instagram rants about like the World Athletics regulations, is that those only apply to athletes trying to set records and get prize money. Everyone else, if you're out of the prize money, you can wear whatever shoe you want. If you're at an unsanctioned race, you wear whatever shoe you want. Like, yeah, the purists would be like, oh no, they wore that, but like,
well, but let's be clear. Really, it mostly matters to the person that's going to actually buy the shoe.
Well, but
right?
but it's
in some regard.
Sure, I would say that, but it's still just if someone wants to, you know, buy a shoe that they feel comfortable in and is pure, and they're going to set a PR or go after PR, they shouldn't run the Boston Marathon because it's downhill. They should go get an EVA shoe from 2008 and say like, this is it. But everyone's like, that's the thing. I'm not worried about it because as far as it relates to sports marketing athletes at Olympic world major marathons, at, you know, rack half marathon, like Valencia 15 or 10K, 15K, like, they're going to wear the stuff that's approved because they want to make money. Whereas everyone else, like, I could show up in like 100 millimeter tooling and go fuck some shit up and look like a fool, but like, nobody's going to be like, well, you can't do that, because you can technically. But and that's where I think people kind of get confused is, and these are like the self-proclaimed like geniuses on social media when it comes to the footwear game. It only pertains to people trying to win money and get records. And then, Ryan, you have a great point. It is also pertains to the purists that want to be like, my PR was legit.
Well, and I actually was going the opposite end of that when I said that. What I was saying is that, so there's two things when I think of this, is like what you were describing, Alex. We all know in this room, at the very least, and I'm sure many more people outside of it, that people in the running industry every year for the past however many years companies have been around have been making shoes that help people run faster.
Yeah.
Like, there's not, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, has there ever been a year at Adidas where they said, hey guys, let's build a shoe that slows things down? Or like, just hits the status quo, right? Like,
Mary wants to run slower this year. Make the shoe that just out of cement. You know, the visual that you described, Alex, was great. Like, these people in a room are like, what's the next thing? That's what they do every year, right? And so someone just found the next thing and actually accelerated the improvement and the ability for runners to go faster, right? And so that is never going to stop. So there's rules in place around carbon fiber shoes that with whatever millimeter you want to say. Well, there'll be another thing maybe that there are no rules set for. That's exactly what we just happened, right? Like, and a spike.
Right. And so that's one part of it, right? The point being, brands are always creating product to help people get better and faster.
Yeah.
Right? The other part of it is, even if there's a shoe that does not meet specifications for what you're saying, records or prize money or whatever, there's 40,000 people that run the Boston Marathon. If they're going to buy that shoe, a company's going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because those
20 people get money there,
Right.
so everyone else is trying to run the fastest time.
Right. Mm-hmm. So if the trend that we're in now is that people can buy a shoe that actually improves their marathon or their half or their 5K, whatever it is, and another iteration or a new technology comes out that's not approved for athletes to go to the Olympics, people will probably still buy that shoe.
Mm-hmm. When do we get to the point where, like 40 millimeter stack height is the IAAF standard, right? But like, what if you're like, hey, BQ demo, like we just made a 50 millimeter stack height. We know it doesn't, like, we know our elites can't wear it, but you sure can. And guess what? Like, people will buy
have
it.
A shoe that's better than our pros.
Yeah, it's just,
Sick in that.
it's like and then it's just like your moral compass at that point, like whether you buy the shoe or not.
But it's not even a moral thing, right? Like,
you're not very analytical.
You're not
do I run faster or slower?
You're buying something that's on a retail wall.
I'm sorry you get paid to run. I don't, so I'd like to run as fast as I can. I'm going to take every assistance that I can. Yeah,
exactly.
No, absolutely. I think the only thing that's going to, there will never be, I would be shocked. And I say never because it's not going to happen. Everyone call my shit out in 10 years if this happens, but like, the Boston Marathon is never going to be like, all of everyone's shoes need to be within the World Athletic Standards. Like, it's not going to happen.
It'd be so brutal to regulate.
What they're going to do.
But also, it's like, are we going to limit our registration and our ability for people to want to run a race?
They're gonna, but the only thing they're going to do is they're going to go, which we saw this year, is brands start coming out across the board, and BQ gets, you have to run like 3 flat now. And like, maybe a hot take, like I think a couple years is gonna be like 255. Like you're gonna have to be running like 630s, like 625s, and like if you can't, like you better go find the best damn shoe on the shelf and figure it out, and go to St. George Marathon.
Exactly.
20,000 feet of descent and figure it out. I don't think anything's stopping brands from doing that, but I do think that there is a call it purist, but there's a level of, you need to have a shoe within the regulations because you sponsor athletes. Most brands, all brands basically, sponsor a set of athletes. However many they do is up to them. And those athletes, and it comes back to what I was saying, is those athletes authenticate the product, whether it's this particular shoe, the Adios Pro, or it's the energy rods, or it's the Light Strike Pro, or if it's the textile rubber outsole. Like, those athletes are authenticating and validating that in a race setting. And then if I want to buy the tier below that or the version on steroids, that's up to the consumer. Because now I know that shit's real and it's working. And now let's see what, like, I can't imagine what's going to be better, or like, what's, if there's a worse version, like, that's probably still better than what I've been rocking. So like, I'll probably just rock that for like $160 and it'll be fine. So it's interesting.
I want to get into the arms. Well, we keep saying arms, but like
the foot race.
The drive race here. That's more appropriate. The
Alex has a military background, so
that's right.
We talk about speed, right? And that's been the kind of the driving product innovation here, right?
Yeah.
When do we go off the cliff of something being uncomfortable? That you literally, it's like it puts you like so far forward on your toes that it no longer becomes wearable. Because like I even saw like
you're constantly rolling down a hill.
Yeah, like I mean, like Eliud talked about in the last, I think, Alpha Fly, that it was his legs were actually not trashed after his last marathon, and like that was like such a surprise to him almost, right? Yeah. So it's like, do you have like if there's a balance, right? when are we going too far on one side where it's like, this is like not viable for
Like we are too
for
aggressive.
someone. Yeah, this is too aggressive, and people like aren't even comfortable wearing this thing anymore.
I would say first, Eliud's comment. I don't work for the brand that makes his shoes, but I know firsthand from like wearing a proto of the Adios Pro at CIM, that's all in the foam with how, you know, reduce muscle fatigue the next day. Like we have a lot of, you know, Ronex Kipruto 26-24 road 10K world record holder has been testing the Adios Pro, and one hell of a tester, size 9, so it's great actually to have. But he's like, yeah, I did like crazy 4x5K, and I felt like I could do a session later in the evening. And you're like, okay, that's a bit insane. But that's all what comes down to the foam. And so with that comment you were saying, like, if you can make a good foam, like athletes will feel fresh, and then the athletes can make more money, run more marathons, whatever. But to your point, the other point of like, is there a point of like almost literal no return? I would say I haven't seen it yet. I would say I would estimate it's probably when like people.
You're getting close.
People no longer. No. I would just say like when people.
This is why there's a limitation in place.
Yeah, I would say like it's when people are no longer running faster. Like, if you know you have when you do running economy studies on your shoes, and like it's improvement, and then when they flatline, that's when you're like, oh, like yeah, but we threw in like a bunch of new shit in this new foam, but like they're doing the same as the previous one. It's like, yeah, but then it's probably not actually better for the runner. Maybe, obviously there's a lot of variables in there, but still. So I think there is one, but I certainly haven't hit it yet with the team. And what are we on the third iteration from another company? This is our first. Like other brands have come out with their first or second. So like, I don't think anyone else has hit it yet, really. At least in something, because they're still retailing shit that's relatively new. So it'll come at some point. But like, maybe when someone takes Oscar Pistorius like actual cheetah legs and like puts them on, and like on the bottom of an Adios Pro, and like that's what you're running on, maybe that's too much. But at this point, no. Did you remember your question, Ryan?
I did. I did. I actually have two. So I'm going to go off of Alex's arms race and really just keep this war going.
Great.
But it felt like there was a race, right? Like Nike was the first to cross the finish line to some extent, right? And then it was everyone else. So what was it like? So you have a couple things going on. Internally on your side, you guys are trying to hit deadline, make this timeline half of what it normally is.
Yeah, sure.
But then there's also many other brands trying to do the same, trying to be the next to get their product out there. What was it like to be in the midst of that, and how much are you looking at just, hey, this is our plan, this is our timeline, versus this is our plan and timeline, but we do have to be aware of the other brands that are in the same boat?
I would say you have to be, I get paid for a reason to do the job that I do. My designer, my developer, our sports science team get paid to do their job. They're experts in the field. So you have to have a certain level of confidence in what you're making. But on the other side, come from a running background. A couple other people on the team come from other speed skating, rugby backgrounds, where it's like you're still competitive. So, but you also need to learn to be adaptable, which we've all, like, anyone that runs knows is like, yeah, just because you have, a race gets canceled or a race gets pulled up or like you're sick, and like you just have to learn to adapt with timelines. And that's kind of what we ran into. Is everything was good, and then it was like, you need to launch a shoe before April 30th for the Olympics. And it was like, oh shit, all right, let's do this shit. Let's do it. And then the Olympics got canceled, and then it was like, all right, well, let's launch it whenever we want now. So again, you just need to be adaptable while remaining extremely confident in what you're doing. Particularly for myself and my team, like, I like to say, and I do believe that I'm not going to be overly pressured by like another brand's shoe, while like I know what I have in like the closet right around the corner from us talking right now is like really fucking good. And now it's just get it on the right athlete at the right time, and then, you know, like we discussed, get it on the right consumer 4 months prior. You know, get another 8,000 BQs for the Adios Pro or something, and see what we can do. But yeah, it's just, you just have to have confidence. You get paid for a reason. You're experts in your field. Let's see what we can do, and we do have that leadership team's got a lot of confidence in us, which is great, because you know, other people in the industry I'm sure can relate. Like, you don't always have that, and it is hard. So short timelines that we dealt with, but also having the resources and the confidence from people very high up at the company made it a lot more tolerable than it probably would have been.
So for you guys, what was more important, to be the next to launch, or to launch it right? Launch it right. I mean, it's for years people were like, "What's Adi doing? What's Adi doing? What's Adi doing?" We're coming out, you know, with boost shoe, like small tweak here, small tweak there, because like we still had the world record. We had it for 10 years on the men's side. Like, you didn't really need to come out with something really. Like, if you think about it, like now hindsight, like, yeah, we should have fucking done something, but like that's okay. You know, you don't always know that. But now it was, once we no longer had it. And it's the same thing with other companies. When we had it, it was like we had it for 10 years. That's a literal decade. So like, other people didn't seem like they had their foot. Brands took the time to come out with something right. Now the tables turned, and we took our time, and here we are. And especially, like I said, with the cancellation of the Olympics, it really just gave us breathing room, but we still wanted to release something that instilled confidence in our athletes and our consumers. That we're not really fucking around, and we're here kind of to do something.
You mentioned, I'm going to take it out of like the weeds of running world a little bit. And you mentioned like speed skating and things like that. I wonder, speed can come from a lot of places. Mm-hmm. It's not just footwear. Has there been anyone who came from like a vertical, or is there something that you, like an outside, non-endemic kind of running field, that like you guys have like been able to pull inspiration from? You mentioned speed skate, like, and even like the race, like the tires on an F1 racing shoe, right?
I would say that would be the only thing as it relates to this, and then it's just, like I said, like it's not a gimmick at all. It is the energy rods. It's like we drew inspiration from the actual human foot, and it's like we're the top of the food chain for a reason. Like, we're fucking best. So let's just slightly enhance that. Let's not like make the foot move and flex in a way that's any different than it's normally designed to do, because also like we're not at the longevity, like we don't know exactly what incredibly, like, this isn't the stiffest shoe, but like we don't know, like, let's check in, let's put a Reddit remind me in 10 years about like where's everyone's Achilles sitting at, like, from wearing crazy stiff shoes.
Mm-hmm. I think that is,
like, what's your big toe doing right now? Like, you're not clawing at all in most shoes. So.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so interesting, because we have all these innovations, right? We've been pushing product forward for so long, but at the end of the day, we keep getting the most inspiration from our own anatomy.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's just like such a really cool grounding moment to be like, the best, what feels like, what propels us forward the most is when we enable what we already have.
Oh, well, exactly. I mean, you look at it, it is as simple as that. Is we have human beings running the races in this, and where are the strong suits, where are the strengths in our various, you know, if we want to get granular with our various sports marketing athletes. And how do we blow that shit up like 100 times, 10 times, strengthen that, and make them better at that? Like, if you make Ronex Kipruto 10 times better than he is now by just like slightly improving his gait. Like, are you kidding me? Like, Mary Katani, like, what is she gonna do if like she has a year where she like didn't, you know, is incredible, but like didn't have a kid in a year and like 8 months out from the New York Marathon, is like has a full year of training, 2 years, 3 years of like actual training, and we made a shoe that makes what she's already good at better. Like, good night, like, see ya. And maybe she like doesn't run New York City and runs like a race that's probably a little bit faster, but it's fine. There's a lot of money there.
Yeah, we don't fault people for doing that.
Do what you want. Chase the cash, baby. Get the bread.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nick, this has been insightful. It's you know, for fans of running, for fans of shoes and technology. I mean, the last few months, the last year, the last couple of years has been it's been interesting to watch, and I think having now more brands, you know, investing into new technology, again, it really pushes performance forward. It pushes kind of the thought of what you can do as humans, as, you know, people at a company like Adidas, like what you can do with a product, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of the next spurt in the history of evolution of technology that will lead us to the next, you know, carbon plated or carbon rotted shoe. You know, and I don't know. I'm kind of already like, well, what's next now? Like, who's gonna come up with the next?
Carbon's
thing?
old.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. I would say the last thing for me that I'll say is, you know, it's the age-old Henry Ford thing, where like if Henry Ford asked people what they wanted, they would just have faster horses and made a car. So you need to listen to consumers, but like you also kind of don't want to listen to. So let's innovate, and that's what all the brands are doing now, and it's fucking awesome. And now we have a space. You got this, you got that box, and let's innovate within that, and it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be exciting. I appreciate it for letting me come and spout some shit off at you guys and educate myself and hopefully the listeners along the way. So.
Last question to go.
Yeah.
Sports are up in the air at the moment. So when the first race is on, the first marathon, half marathon, where the the shoe is really in front of the world, what are you guys gonna do? Where are you gonna watch it? Is there gonna be a party? And I guess my question is more like, where is Adi in their world? Are they gonna be like, yes, it's in the streets?
I think I'm just gonna say, leave it out there. It could happen. Probably should happen. London Marathon hasn't been canceled yet on the elite field. That's all I'm saying. So, am I gonna wake up to watch that? I can't confirm that because that's pretty early. I wake up early for calls, but like,
don't even pretend. You will absolutely like come on.
So
we'll all be
happens,
awake if London Marathon happens. We're getting up.
I assume they'll be wearing it. I don't know if we're gonna have athletes. I don't know if the race is gonna happen, but if it does, we'll probably have some people there.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Hailey would come out of retirement to just to debut?
I heard Hailey was just going to go to Sauvie Island and run 2+ laps, and that's going to be ours.
He'd ruin Strava.
Oh yeah, he'd crush it. But like I said, I appreciate it, guys, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Nick, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
So now we can get a little bit of a specific athlete perspective on the Adios Pro. Reed Fischer joined us today, and one of the reasons we brought Reed in is because Nick mentioned that Reed kind of got to be a little bit part of the process here in building what is the Adios Pro. And Reed, you officially joined Adidas in February, but I noticed on your Instagram when you were kind of reviewing the shoe when it finally launched in June. You mentioned that you had actually been able to try some of the other brands, kind of 4% or the carbon plated series. And I'm curious, I think you have a unique perspective here. I guess from a high level, what feels different about the Adios Pro than maybe some of the competitors?
Yeah, definitely, like you said, like I had tried everything under the sun. I kind of came in this limbo period between being a college grad when the 4% were sort of just starting to come out, And then slowly, every other brand started bringing out a shoe right around the time I was hoping to sign. So, signing with Adidas in February and getting my hands on the Adios Pro is a really awesome step forward for me to see. I think one of the promises I made myself when I was signing with brands was that I was never going to rep a product and a brand that I didn't believe in. And Adidas stepped up in a huge way. I think, like you said, wearing everything, I've worn Hoka, Carbon X, I've worn Vaporfly, I've worn Next Percent, I've worn Alphafly, I've worn Saucony Endorphin Pro. Like, I've worn everything, including Adios Pro. And I know we were talking before we started recording that, I think runners are so particular, and I think each of those shoes fills a void for each person. So I'll speak on the Adios Pro a bit. Like, for me, one of the things I love most about it is that it's not too marshmallowy. The foam, the Light Strike Pro they use is really snappy, but it still has that kind of like super shoe, super high up off the ground, stack heights. I think if you talk to Nick, it's probably fractions of a millimeter below the legal limit. So they're fully legal, but you still get that cushion underneath you that we've all come to know and love. But yeah, the thing that I liked, so I was wearing Vaporflies even after Next Percents and Alphaflies were out, just because I preferred that ground feel that you kind of still got. You didn't feel like you were running in a contraption. You felt like you were running in a really good flat. And I think that's something that most runners will really enjoy about the Adios Pro. I think at this point, Nike is so in line with Kipchoge in their design process that, to me, like, the Next Percent and Alphafly just felt so designed for a guy who's trying to break 2 hours in the marathon, that even though I'm trying to come close to that, it just didn't feel quite natural for my stride and the way I run. So I think the Adios Pro will hopefully feel more like a traditional flat for most people, something more in line with an old school Adios, where you still can feel how hard you're running and you feel like, man, I'm flying right now, rather than just having all of that proprioception sucked away from the shoe. But you're still having all the benefits and the leg saving effect that we've all come to love about the super shoes, that, that stack height really absorbs everything, and the Light Strike Pro absorbs everything, and that, the energy rods and the carbon shank in the rear of the foot basically just load your foot in a way that you get that sort of springy feeling without compromising any of, like, that just beating of your legs on the pavement, just really taking a toll over the last 10K of a marathon. So yeah, I think this is a shoe that I've totally fallen in love with. I've traveled light on my way home here, and these were one of 2 pairs of shoes that made the trip, and that should speak to, I have about 10 pairs of Adidas trainers and flats and spikes to pull from, and I picked a pair of trainers and my favorite ones. So
I like this bit already. So we'll play the game. If you're a runner who needs to take a quick weekend trip, and you only have room for 2 pairs of shoes in your luggage, so you pack the Adios Pro. But I think it is interesting for runners to get a perception of, like, what kind of shoe you seek and the ones that you like. What's the other footwear in your bag? Like, what trainers do you is kind of your go-to?
Yeah, so I wear the Solar Glide and Solar Boost for all of my training. Those are basically Adidas's 2 kind of workhorse shoes. They're traditional boost foam, which, if you've ever worn Adidas before, that's their bread and butter foam. It's really responsive. It goes forever. I can throw 500 miles on a pair of those without feeling like I'm beating my legs up too bad. Like, they just tick almost every box apart from the light and fast box, and that's where the Adios Pro enters the equation. So yeah, I think we were talking a bit offline before we started too, but, like, the difference between Boost and Light Strike, for people who are, Adidas loyalists or have even been in Adidas footwear before, you probably know Boost foam, and Light Strike Pro is a very abrupt departure from that. So if you're in a Boost shoe right now and you're expecting an Adios Pro to feel similar, fair warning, it's not going to, but I think you'll be very, very pleasantly surprised by what's under your foot instead of Boost foam. It's a very welcome change, especially when it comes to picking up the pace. Boost foam is notoriously responsive, but also with that responsiveness and that durability comes some added weight. And I think Adidas has towed the line pretty well here between finding a midsole foam that's really, really bouncy and responsive, but isn't quite as heavy as the traditional Boost. So it's a good happy medium.
So let's say you have every shoe, in your arsenal, in your bag, and you're at the track, right? At what point does coach, like, what's the rep or structure of the workout where you're like, oh shoot, I need to snag the Adios Pro? You know what I mean? Like, is it so? Like, when would you slap that on as opposed to, you know, the Adios or the Takumi? Like, what do you think the Adios Pro's wheelhouse is? I guess for like, when you're diving into a workout.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one a ton of people have asked. You know, I think we're in this funny state right now where you see guys racing 5Ks and 1500s in plated shoes just because they feel sort of like a spike and they save your legs way more than a spike. Personally, I like the mentality of lacing up a pair of spikes and knowing I'm going to go for a good hard rip on a track. So for me, you know, I usually draw the line on I'm not going to wear the Adios Pro anymore when it comes to like probably about 3K pace. You know, 5K up on a track or on a road, it feels really comfortable. You know, I've ran everything from threshold miles at like 5-minute pace to mile pace 200s, cranking out 29, 30-second 200s in them. And I think right around that 29, 31-second 200 mark is, if you're on a track, about the line where you start to feel a little bit uncomfy with the 39.8 millimeters under your foot as you're ripping around the turns. So I think, you know, the upper locks down really well, but at a certain point with any shoe that has a stack height as tall as this one, you're just going to feel a little dicey when you're really, really cranking at that fast pace around some tight corners. But for anything road work, this is my go-to now. You know, if I'm on asphalt, if I'm running a rep longer than a minute, honestly, like I prefer to be in these. I try not to use them too much because I think they make me appreciate them a little too much, and I feel too good when I wear them. And sometimes I think runners are a little too masochistic, and I'm definitely in that category where it's like, oh, I don't want to feel too good on this workout, so I better not wear the Adios Pro.
Well, I'm curious. You know, it feels like it's clearly an advantage if you have it in some workout scenarios. So, and you work out with a big slab of guys. I'm curious what it was like for when you got a pair, but the rest of the Tin Mob did not. How did that go over?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm still the only one with them. Yeah, I think this colorway, as their initial drop, you know, I think they only did a couple hundred pairs worldwide. So it's definitely, they were prioritizing who they sent them to. So I know my fellow American marathoners that are sponsored by Adidas, so some of the BAA crew, you know, Gerald Mock, I know Connor McMillan got them as well, myself, and a handful of the BAA women got their hands on a pair. But apart from that, I don't think too many Adidas athletes got them in this first wave. So it's definitely been fun. You know, I think the Adizero Pro is the shoe that I wore in the trials, and that was Adidas's first plated shoe, and that's geared a little bit more 10K to half marathon focus. And I was on the outside looking in when we got those because we got them in sample size, and my feet are too big for sample size. So I was like toeing the line in workouts with, you know, Sam and Connor, and just being like, all right, these guys have plates in there, and I'm just ripping on, holding on in my OG Boston. So we'll see how this goes. And so now I'm sure the tables have turned, and they're like, oh, there goes Reed and his 39 millimeter stack height, beautiful looking, all white, glorious, fast, incredible shoes. You know, we'll just try not to get dropped today. But yeah, I know. I mean, I think the biggest difference is everyone's still able to do everything with me. You know, it's not like I'm pulling off the front of the pack and just crushing people because it's not a race setting. So I shouldn't be. You know, those guys are my teammates. But the big difference is just the recovery aspect. And I think that's something that most people will talk about when they talk super shoes is the ability to bounce back from those big, especially like marathon volume workouts where you're getting in 20 plus miles, 2+ hours of running, and, you know, in an old pair of flats that just takes a toll on your bones that takes you a handful of days to come back from until you feel good again. And I know I've been there plenty of times, and I'm sure plenty of people who are listening have been there plenty of times. And I think, you know, if you're someone who's turned to a carbon plated big stack height shoe, you probably have seen the benefits of that for some of your key marathon workouts, just getting the work in, and then you wake up a day or two later and you're like, oh, I actually don't feel too bad. And so I think for me, it's like a good sort of like proactive recovery tool in addition to like, yeah, these things just make me run objectively faster. So it's two birds, one stone, which is always appreciated.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting perspective. What is like, what do you feel like you're getting a greater advantage from? The actual, like, the aggressiveness that the shoe allows you to race in, or are you
Hmm.
getting more of an advantage because you aren't as beat up after workouts?
Man, I think it depends on when we're talking, right? So like if we're talking training, I'll take the recovery piece all day. I don't, most of our training is effort based anyway, so it's not like I'm overly worried about like crushing a specific pace to know that I'm fit. I think a lot of our confidence comes from just doing the training day in and day out, and not feeling like, oh, I need to crush this one specific workout. 360 days out of the year, I'd probably say I appreciate the recovery piece. I was talking to Ronex Kipruto. We both got the shoes, and I don't know if Nick mentioned it or not, but both of us agreed that it was like we could run a session in the morning in the shoes, and like we'd go out for our shakeouts in the afternoon and feel like we could run the same session again, probably at about the same pace, if not a little bit slower. So it's that piece is really, really hard to come by in training. And as an elite athlete, like the ability to recover and get ready for your next hard effort is one of the biggest things you can have. So from that standpoint, I think the recovery tool is way more important for, like I said, 360 days out of the year. But the 5 days I'm racing, and the one or two marathons I'm going for a year, I think just the ability to get to 35K and be like, all right, I got 7K of hard running left, and my legs don't feel like they've been hit with baseball bats by 20 MLB players, is definitely an advantage in and of itself. So pros and cons to both. I would say I appreciate probably the recovery more than the implicit speed if I had to pick one or the other.
I think that's really interesting because, we think of this technology as advancing and kind of changing our perceptions on what times are fast, and they've obviously done that, right,
Mm-hmm.
with Eliud. But I think where it's also changing perceptions on like recovery time, right, and like doing doubles, and are people going to start experimenting with, like higher volume in a shorter amount of time, and like I just like it opens up a whole book of things.
Mm-hmm.
If recovery is more viable in between sessions, and so I wonder, as those of these as these sort of shoes become more available, are we going to start tinkering our workouts and around that? So I think that's a kind of a completely a new unknown that we'll probably learn over the next 4 years. Speaking of like the next workout and the next recovery, Reed, what's for the last question of the day? Anything on the calendar? Like, obviously things are a little bit in flux right now, but like, what's the tentative North Star that you and Coach are kind of working towards right now?
Yeah. So the good news is, as we've seen, like things are starting to happen again, barring a greater peak in the future, which hopefully we will not hit. But yeah, I think right now we've got a handful of the two-man guys who are eyeing Music City 5K. So that's Nashville on August 15th. So we're a little under a month out. I'm hoping to do my classic Reed Fischer take 2 seconds off your 5K PR every year trend there, and maybe a bit more, get my PR in the 1330s instead of being a 1340 guy. I think that's probably my weakest PR on paper compared to my 10K, 10-mile half marathon stuff. So it'll be fun. We've been ripping a lot of 5K workouts, and I feel fitter for 5K than I definitely ever have in my life. So we'll see how it goes. And then the big one for me, qualified for World Half Marathon Champs, and that's in Poland. Was supposed to be March 30th or 31st or something like that, but they rescheduled, so it's now October 17th. As of today, Americans are not allowed in Poland, so we're crossing our fingers that in a few months' time things will be a little bit more opened up, and we'll hopefully be managing our situation a little bit better here in the States, and I'll be able to go over there with the other 9 U.S. qualifiers and just see what we can do, and give these shiny new guys a proper run for their money outside of training, and just see how fast we can run, and hopefully dip under 61, and just really make a name for myself on the international circuit. I think I'm pretty well known in the States, but at this point, like, I have higher goals, and I want to be up there with some of the guys who are consistently in talks to like medal. And I know that's going to be a huge process, but I think World Half will be a huge step in that direction for me. So just really hoping that that one comes to fruition and I'll be able to get out there in Poland and do something quick, but time will tell.
All right, Reed. Well, we're crossing our fingers that you'll be able to cross the pond, and we're also hoping that Music City goes down, and we'll dip into that sub 1330 space. You're not gonna, yes or no, to rock the Adios Pro on the 5K?
Oh man, I don't know. I've been toying with it. I think I'll pack both. Yeah, I'll pack both and see which way I'm pulled.
All right, man. Well, good stuff. Thanks for joining us, and I appreciate your perspective, because I know you've been able to kind of dip your toe, literally and figuratively, into all the other kind of carbon plated shoes. So we appreciate your time, and best of luck moving forward, man.
Of course.
All right,
Thank you.
man.
Thanks for having me.
So we got Nick Roche, Reed Fischer, both representing Adidas, and it is our first episode with the shoe talk. Is it a coincidence that Alex used to work at Adidas? I don't know. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I mean, man, it was really cool insight. Like, the shoe industry is such a big part of the running industry, right? And track and field, and these shoe companies in a lot of ways prop up the ability for us to have a professional side of the sport by sponsoring these athletes, right? And so sometimes you forget, you see a shoe on a shelf and we're talking about shoes and the runner's running fast in a shoe, but you're not thinking about all the things that go into it behind the scenes, right? And the people that are actually touching it along the way, along the process, from ideation to, distribution and all these things. And so it resonates with me, and I got to feel like it will resonate with a lot of people when they think about their jobs and their manager comes in and says, we're falling behind. Our competition is beating us. What are we going to do about it? And like, when your manager says, we lost the world record, what are we going to do about that? Like, it was a pretty awesome story to think about. Just, you're charged now with like, hey, how do we get that world record back?
Right. And I especially for somebody like Nick, like he, that like we're prideful in the things that we work on, the brands we work for, right? And it's like, he saw it go down, and like, to finally have a GM come in and say, like, he said push go, right? And it's like, I'm sure there were people on the team that like had ideas to respond, to the Nike the 4%, and it's like, it just finally took a GM to say, like, all right, we're investing. Like, let's not get any farther behind. Like, let's dive right in. And I think it's also hard when like somebody comes in and charging and says, let's change things up. To remember, like, you still have to put out the shoe that you're currently working on, right? So it's like, and I'm sure a lot of the footwear and the technological industry can resonate with this. Like, you see this technology that's on the horizon that you're like totally excited about and you want to pour everything into, but you still have to shepherd the current model along out there. And that's like such a tough thing to do and like pour your whole heart into.
Yeah. And I think it's like, it's very significant, the timeline he talked about. And, normally these companies are working 18 months in advance of a launch of a new line, right? And these guys had to turn this around in 9 months. You're talking about half the time a company normally does things. And like, for me, that's perspective. You remember the early days of FlowTrack, and we would make decisions within the minute. All right, I guess we're going to go to this meet tomorrow, or like in this weekend, and we're going to live stream it, or we're going to broadcast or whatever, right? And we were so nimble and so small that we could do those things. And I think about our team now, and we're working months in advance and getting ahead of it because we have such a high volume of events, right? So those days of the early time just seem so far away, and you have so many moving parts now, and so cutting your planning time in half, that adjusts where you have resources going. It adjusts your planning, and adjusts your budget. So it's not a insignificant thing. It's not just like, oh man, they hammered through that shoe process. It's like, no, people that had been working on things for a year probably had to stop what they were doing, figure out how they were going to fit this new initiative in while still trying to keep timeline on the other stuff they still had going on.
Exactly. Right.
So it's you can't be understated how significant that was.
Yeah, totally. And like, yeah, and well, you get nervous because you also don't want to like set on a, like change timelines now, right? Because then a manager can all of a sudden be like, oh, we can turn things around in 9 months. I didn't do that. Why didn't we do that before?
No. I promise this was a one-time thing. Well, and yeah, the last thing I thought, and this was kind of just more of a fun anecdote, was, we're talking about these new shoes, and Nick was very, there's a lot of pride there in the brand and the products they're working on. Like, he's not ready to just move on to this next shoe without letting people remember they still had a really good shoe before this. We held the world record for quite a while, and people are still winning and getting runner-up finishes at major road races. Like, our shoe's still really good.
Right. Like, highly held the world record for how long? Like, the Adios was had the world record for like a decade. So it's like, it's still great tech, and it's just like you said, Ryan, it's like one dude beat us. Yeah, one. Right. And it's like, now we got to like completely scramble. And like, that's really hard, right? Because you don't, like we said, like you don't want to lose that core, right? You don't want to lose that core identity and chemistry that got you here, because here is pretty damn good. And it was the best for a really long time, but you got to innovate. And that's why we're having the conversations now, is because it's moved past to such a completely different echelon of product. I followed up from an athlete perspective after talking to Nick, and I talked to Reed, and I thought that was a really cool conversation. And the part that surprised me the most is he actually just kept, when he started talking about the recovery process of these carbon shoes. And I thought that was a really interesting insight, because you see the end result, right? These sub 2 marathons or whatever. And it's like, oh, the shoe made him run that fast. You are now enabled to run this pace for this amount of time. But he was talking about the recovery period in between, right? So it's like, wait a second, what is the real advantage here? Is it that you're running that much faster, or is that you can recover faster and your legs aren't as banged up? And like he was saying, he felt like he could do multiple workouts in a day. Well, it's like, okay, so because you're able to put back-to-back hard workouts together, is that what's really enabling you to run super fast? Is it not the tech of, not really the aggressiveness on like how the shoe actually makes you plant your foot, but is it just because you've been able to put in better aerobic efforts on a more consistent basis, and you're able to recover from them? So it's like, that was the thing. I was like, I don't think we're talking about that enough, is the recovery benefit that you're getting from these shoes.
Yeah. And I think it's both, right? I think the answer to that question is it's both. We're mostly talking, and I say we're just, generally out there in conversation, we're mostly talking about the technology that is making you run faster. But to your point, there is an exponential benefit when you're getting not only the faster running, but the speedier recovery, allowing you to run faster more often. And, and the hope is, you still have to balance that line of injury, right? And, but even Nick, who's not a pro athlete, is a really fit runner, telling us about workouts he's hopping on the track and doing with his shoes, and feeling pretty good the next day. You're just like, okay, well, I'd like to rewind some years and maybe try some of these shoes on.
Is it just the race to not be broken? You know what I mean? It's like, or is this just the war of attrition? We know, like, we have the science of what workouts make you faster. We just need to learn how to not be broken along the way.
Right. I mean, we don't know the long-term effects of, running this fast this many times yet, but hey, that's all part of the fun of, turning the corner in the world of technology. So, for me, I really enjoyed this kicking off the series with these guys. It was super insightful, and got us to dig into the behind the scenes of the industry a little bit, which we haven't been really done yet. So I appreciate them coming on. If you like it, we would love to hear what you liked, what you want to hear in our next shoe conversation. What stories or what aspects of the product or of the process do you want to know more about? And, as always, if you like the show, please follow, subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, on FlowTrack. And as always, we appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, guys, and we want to know what you want to hear, what other things you want us to dive into. And these are the conversations that we want to bring up because people are working really hard in our industry, and we want to shine that spotlight on them. So we're getting really excited to share some new content with you. We have a couple new series on the cusp of things. Tune in next week. We're going to have a couple fresh interviews and some hot releases that we're really excited to share with the running community. But until then, we have to keep those conversations beneath the grandstand. Thanks for joining us, guys.